Hilchis Shcheinim Perek Arba Aser. So we learned the din of a bar metzra. The basic din is that if you have Reuven and Shimon are neighbors, and Shimon goes ahead and sells his field, so Reuven to Levi, to not a neighbor, so Reuven, the neighbor, could go to Levi and say, listen, I'm the neighbor, so therefore it's a teva yosha that I should have the field. I'll give you the money that you paid for it, and I'll take the field. That's the din. So Kemuvin, as a result of that, it'll be sometimes hard for Shimon to sell the field. Because Lepil, a person is going to think to himself, since there's Reuven, is the neighbor, so he may be masalik me, so why should I buy the field? And we learned about that, and that's why in certain times when it's pressing for the moicher to sell the field, so that overrides the din of bar metzra, like we learned in the previous bracha. Now over here we're saying a case where a person wants to sell the field, but he doesn't want that this buyer should have a problem, or the buyer doesn't want to have a problem with the bar metzra, so what he does is he calls the bar metzra and the buyer. He calls the bar metzra and the buyer, and he tells the bar metzra clearly, listen, I want to sell the field. Are you interested in buying the field? So I'll sell the field to you. And if not, this is a buyer, and he's going to be interested in buying the field, in order to avoid having a problem issue with bar metzra. That's the halach. Perek Arbasa. Areitza limker sadeu. A person wants to sell his field. And Vehevi ben ha-metzra shalei, he goes and brings his neighbor. And also, V'zer shereitza likach mimeno, and the person that, the potential buyer, brings them both to Bezdin. V'ama leben ha-metzra. And the owner of the field says to the ben ha-metzra, Im tirtza lirkiz b'kach v'kach, this is how much I want to sell my field for. If you want to buy it for this amount of money, I say buy it. V'imlav salikis atzmucha, make clear that you're not buying it. And this person will buy the field. I want you to so to speak, be mavater right now. Either buy it or be mavater on your rights as a bar metzra. So the din is harei zeh le'nisher l'taina. So the bar metzra has takanotaina. He has to say ela oy mevi mois miyad v'yikna, or he has the choice to go ahead and bring money and buy it. Batlus chusa. Or he's talking about mevatlus chus. If he says I don't have money, I can't buy it right now, so he's mevatlus chus. Now Omar etrach v'avi, I'm going to go and be matriach and try to get money, to raise money, and through that buy it. Ain't shame lei. However, he says eilach v'avi, I'm going to get the money. As I say, imhu omuchi yeshlei, if he's a person that we know has money, we assess that he has money, is a person that's a wealthy person, he could go ahead and get money, is mamtinale achiel v'avi, we let him go and bring it. However, he's not a person that we could assess that has money. Is ein shemulei, because she'ener reitzel l'shav. He says, "I'll go and get the money." Where's he going to get the money? Pastor doesn't have the money. Lefichach emulei. Oy toitzi atzazuzim. Either you produce right now money, oy batlas chusa. She'en kevim zman lebalametz. We don't give him time to go ahead and get the money. He has to go ahead and get the money. But pastors, if he goes ahead, he goes ahead and he says, "I'm going home and picking up the money." That's not called eilach v'avi. Eilach v'avi means that it's going to take time in order to get it. It's etrach v'avi, which means I'm going to go ahead and be matriach, and I'll have to go sell things or whatever. I'll raise the money. And eilach v'avi is also, but it's not the pshat is that the money is lying in the house. He doesn't have to have money in his pocket. So notice if he's saying that I'm going to get the money right now, so then even if he's not omid, but pashtus, you wait from a very short amount of time. Masha'inkin, if he's going to say, I'm going to go, I have to go here or there. So if it's etrach va'avi, so then there's ein shemulei. Masha'inkin, elach va'avi is shemulei if he's an omud. Now, hoitzi, so that's the number one. So, lachamal. So the seller goes ahead and brings side the bar metzra and side the potential buyer, and he says, do you want to buy it? If you want to buy it, buy it. This is what I want to sell it for. And if not, he's going to buy it. So if he says, I don't want to buy it, so obviously, so he was mevater. If he says, I do want to buy it, so if he says, etrach va'avi, so we don't listen to him. If he says, elav va'avi, so it depends. If he's omud, he's not omud. That's what we learned. Hoitzi ben ha-metzra amois, ve'etzel lekech amois. They're both standing there, and he tells the bar metzra that there's this potential buyer, do you want to buy? And he says he wants to buy, and he produces money. But lepeil, the buyer's money is better money than the neighbor's money. Im hoyu shelekech tevim mizuzov. Whereas the money was better. Tesva says it means that it was heavier. Whereas the coin, sometimes one coin was heavier than the other coin. So his coins were heavier coins. Or they were a better currency. There's certain currencies that were easy to spend. There's certain currencies that were not so easily spent. Like we say, oivel ha-secher. Is batlas chusei. So ve'enle din ben ha-metzra. So since they're both here, one of them is producing better coins, the other one's producing less not as good. The coin's not as so good. So the seller says, listen, I would like to sell it to this buyer. For me, it's better to sell it to this buyer because I'll be getting better coins. Between the buyers, it's better for this buyer to get it than for this buyer. But for me, it's better. For the moicher says, for me, it's better to sell it to this buyer because I'm going to get better than to sell it to this buyer. So then the moicher, so now the bar metzger can't go to the lekech and say, listen, the moicher could have sold it to me just like to you. He couldn't have sold it to you because you weren't giving him what I was willing to give him. That's the avodas hadvar. Memela ein lidim ben hametzer. Is botless chusav ein lidim ben hametzer. Now hoyer roitza lekech leknesa livnis babatim. The purpose, he wanted to buy it in order to build houses there. Uben hametzer roitza lezara, and the other person, the neighbor, says, I want to plant over there. Is halikeach zeicha mishum yishav v'oretz ve'ein badin ben hametzer. So in other words, when a buyer wants the buyer to build houses, and the other one wants it, and that's really the whole schus of the Ben HaMetzah. The whole schus of Ben HaMetzah means I want to have two fields together. So I'm buying it in order to have the two fields together. And the other person says, no, I want to make this area into a place that's residential, a place that I'm gonna build houses over there. So mitzad yishuv haaretz, we give it to the person that wants to buy it for houses, even though he's not the neighbor. And vice to is the Pashtus Advarim, the Medayik, that doesn't say Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, it says Yishuv Haaretz. So this thing would apply even to Chutz La'aretz. Halacha beis. Now, Boli Keach v'nimlach beben hametzer v'omerli harei pleini ben hametzer shelecha reitz alim k'lisod zu elach v'ekach menu or not. That's what he's asking him. So again, Reuven and Shimon are neighbors. Shimon wants to sell his field, and Levi is a potential buyer. And Levi goes and asks Reuven advice. He says, Shimon wants to sell his field. Do you suggest I buy the field or don't I buy the field? And v'omer lech v'kach. And Reuven tells Levi, go ahead and buy it. It's a good idea. Is le bittul schusei. So even though he gave advice to Levi to buy the field from Shimon, doesn't mean he forfeited his rights to the field. And therefore, v'yesh l'salek eisei acha sheikna. If they made a Maisa Kinyan on the Bar Metzra, that he was Mevater his Chus's Bar Metzra. So over here we have again that there's a Musa called a Kinyan, that a Bar Metzra makes a Kinyan to be Mevater on his Chus as a Bar Metzra. So if he made a Kinyan to Mevater his Chus as a Bar Metzra, so he made a Kinyan. Mashengan, if he didn't make a Kinyan, it's just that he advised the buyer to buy it from his neighbor, so that's not called that he's being mevater on the schus, because the svar is, because Lepel, he knows that if he's going to go to his neighbor, he's going to want to buy this field, so his neighbor is going to want a bigger price, because he knows that for him the field is worth more. So therefore he's advising the leker to go ahead and buy the field. Memela, he'll buy it for the normal price, and then he'll be able to take it from the leker. So Memela, the reason why he advised the leker to buy it wasn't because he was being mevater on the schus. Fakert. The reason is because he wanted the leker to buy it and then exercise the schus. But why can't he go lechatchila? Because lechatchila he knows that they'll sell it to him for more. So therefore, the fact that he advised him to buy it is not an indication that he was mevater on the schus. Now, b'amed dvarim amurim shetzarech kinyan k'shemochel lekedim sheyikna. In other words, a bar metzra, in order to lose his rights as a bar metzra before the person bought it, so then that's only works with a kinyan. In other words, after he already bought it, the lekech bought the karka, and now he has a right, Bambus, to go ahead and be misalik from the karka. And Lepel, after he already bought it, he was misalik his chus. He said he was like mavater. So once he's mavater after this lekech bought it, so then you don't need a kinyan. In other words, if there was no sale yet, and Bar Metzra has be'etzim a right to be misalik anyone that's going to buy a neighbor, he's going to buy a neighboring field, so you have to make a kinyan for him to lose that right to be able to misalik a neighboring field. And as we said, according to the Rambam, a kinyan works. According to other Rishonim, even a kinyan wouldn't work, because it's not something I have. It's just something that's a din on that person, and I have a right to exercise the month from that person, a sisa ayoshev atev. So it's not really a kinyan. But according to the Rambam, I could make a kinyan. A kinyan will work. When do I need a kinyan? Before that person bought it. And I'm being mevater on my rights to be able to be masalikim after he'll buy it. Mashenkin, if he already bought it, now I have a right to be masalikim, and now I'm being mevater on that right. So then I could be mevater on that right even without a kinyan. The actual Ben HaMetzer went ahead and helped this buyer with whatever it is in in with his property, or he rented from him. He saw him building or breaking and using it. He didn't object. He didn't raise any objections. So then is harei machal v'shuv ein yochel l'salke is nachamal. Before this person bought it, so in order for the neighbor to lose his schus as bar metzra, you have to have a kinyan from the bar metzra. Mashenkin, once he bought it and he was mevater, so even if it was just meichel, there was no kinyan. We have an indication that he was meichel because he saw it and he didn't say anything. So mele he loses his schus as a bar metzra. Now hoye ben hametzra b'mdina acheres echele cotton. Originally, when the sale was taking place, this bar metzra was elsewhere. It was in Medina Acheres. He was sick. He was a cotton. Va'acher zman hivri achela or vehigdal cotton u'boa helach. And now he became gesund, or he became a gadol. Is eine yochel l'salke. So you can't go ahead and say, listen, he's the bar metzra, and lepel he wasn't around, and therefore I'm going to be masalik de lekech, because im ata imer came. If you're going to say that the bar metzra has a right, even if he wasn't really available to buy it, so nevertheless later on when he's going to come along and become available, so he can be masalik de lekech, ein ata yochel limcher karkeisin. A person will never be able to sell his karka. Sher lekech emel acher kamashonim teitzim yodei ukazeh heiru agenim. So it wouldn't work out well if the din would be that the bar metzra has a right to exercise his right as bar metzra a lot later. Because if right now he's really capable of buying it, and the lekech bought it, so now the bar metzra can come along and say, listen, you bought it, but really I should have bought it. And the Mela, you bought it for me, you're my shliach. Mela, he's misalikim. Masha'enkin, if the bar metzra wasn't really around to buy it, either because he was a b'medina acheres, or because he was ill, or because he was a cotton, so b'cholai gavna, so when the lekech buys it, it becomes his. And when the bar metzra comes along later and says, now I'm capable, now I'm ready, now I'm here, so that we don't rechenzech with it, and it belongs to the lekech. Halacha dalet. HaMoicher shavim masayim b'mona. Lepel, someone bought the lekech. Now we're talking about the bar metzra is being masalik the lekech. How much does he have to give him? Bepashtus, he has to give him what he took, what he paid for it, what the lekech paid for it. Now what happens if be'emes the lekech paid 100, but it was worth 200? It's a piece of karka that's really worth 200, and lepel the lekech bought it for 100. HaMoicher shavim masayim b'mona. Is im lechola om mezel u'mecher, just this seller sells property that's worth more, he sells it for less. Because to him he would have also sold it for 100. So Mela, all he has to do is give 100 to the lekech, which is the money he paid for the karka, and he's masalik the buyer. However, he wouldn't give it for such a low price to everyone else. Really, Bemis, it's worth 200. Just this lekech, he knows him, he likes him, so therefore he gave it to him for 100. So basically, he gave him like a present 100, and he took it from 100. Is noisle masayim shu shava, so he has to pay him the 200 which is worth, because amoicher nosel is a matana. The fact that he gave it to him for 100 was really a present to the lekech, and since it was a present to the lekech, so therefore, when the bar metzra comes along and wants to take it away from the lekech, he takes it away from the lekech, but he has to pay him what the karka was worth. Lokach shava monim masayim fakert. What happens if it's really worth 100 and the lekech paid 200? Is eini lochel l'salke. He can't be masalkim achi itna masayim unless he actually gives him the 200. Because lepel, since he paid 200 for it, so eino chinami, maybe it was overpriced, but lepel he paid 200 for it. So therefore, for the bar metzra to be masalik lekech, he has to give him 200. Now tom ben hametzra she'asu knunya b'neiam. If the ben metzra tainas that he really didn't pay him 200, the tiny that paid 200, but lepel aliba de amas he paid less for it. So nishba lekech ben kitzes chayfetz v'netel masayim zuz. So the lekech has to be swear ben kitzes chayfetz and take masayim zuz in order for the bar metzra to be able to take it from him. In other words, he takes from him masayim zuz like he's tining, and the other one is tining it that it's not really worth masayim zuz. Memele bepashtus, it wasn't masayim zuz, but lepel, since he's in the karka and he's tining that is masayim zuz, so he's a nishba v'netel. Now v'im hoye sham edim shenosim masayim. If there was actually Adam that they saw the transferring of money that the lekech paid the seller Masayim, uben metzar tein shamon hoisa beinei uvein hamecher. He tainas that he gave him taka 200, but it wasn't really 200. It was 200, and later on the guy, the seller will give back the buyer 100 of it. He only paid for him a mana. He only paid him 100, and the fact that he gave him 200 was only a b'chinas amana. In other words, for him to give it back later. Is hareza nation dom k'mishidu edom. So now he has to pay like the edom were made. V'achar kach misalke. And then he's misalke. So in other words, the difference is if there's no edom that they saw him actually, the lekech actually giving the money to the buyer, so then in order for the lekech to get 200, lekech is tithing, I pay 200. And the karka is only worth 100. The lekech is tithing, I pay 200 for this karka. So lepeil, since the lekech is tithing, he paid 200, even though the bar metzger is tiny that he didn't really pay 200. So lepel, the lekech has to be a nishba v'netel. So in other words, before he gets the 200, he has to swear, and then the lekech gives him the 200, and then he's misalikim from the karka. Masha'enkin, if there's two edom that saw the lekech giving the 200 to the meicher, so it's not clear that he gave it to him amanas that he's going to keep it, and that it's the taka the money for the sale, but they saw him giving it the 200. So the din is right now, since they saw him giving it 200, so the taina of the meicher right now has no bearings. So in order for the meicher to be able to get the field, he has to give the buyer the 200, and only then can it be misalikim. Now once he gave him the 200 and he's in the field, so now he can taina that I gave you 200, and really I should have only given you 100. So now he's taining a new taina, so that taina is a taina, and memela, and that he has to be a swear, shvos heses. I'm sorry, and then he swears a shvus heses. Hareza nesim dom k'mishidu edom v'achar kach misalke, and then it must be a heses. Shalokev masayim v'nifter. He swears a shvus heses. He's telling that you really sold it, bought it for less than 100, and he's telling no, I bought it for 100, and therefore you owed me 100. So he's telling really, I gave you 200, you don't deserve 200, and he's telling no, you gave me 200, and I deserve 200. So the person that received the 200. The buyer swears a shvus heses and he's put. Halacha Kol haroitza limker karka. So till now we're speaking about the din of bar metzra. If there's no bar metzra, so normally you have a right to sell it to whoever you want. If there is a bar metzra, so we say that you should sell it to the bar metzra, and if you didn't sell it to the bar metzra, so the bar metzra could take it away from the lekech, except in certain cases where it's not, the bar metzra doesn't have the right. But the general din is that the bar metzra has the rights to buy this karka, and even if lekech bought the karka, the bar metzra could take it away from him. Now, kol hareitz limker karka. Someone wants to sell karka. Now, ubo shnaim, there's two potential buyers. Kol echad mem eimer ani ekach b'dam meila. I'm willing to pay this amount of money, the equal amount of money. Ve'ein echad mem balametzer, and neither of them are neighbors. Is hoyo ha'echad miyoshvo ir ve'echad mishcheni asada. One of them, they live in the same city together, and the other ones are neighboring in the sada. So the din is shachana ir kedem. The shachana ir is kedem because Lepel, since he's a shachana ir, so even though they're not a bar metzra, it doesn't mean that shcheni asad doesn't mean a bar metzra. It means they're in the same bicker, so to speak, and they are in the same area where their fields are in the same area. But over here, they're in the same area. They live together. So living together is a closer inyan, and therefore it's more of a right thing to sell it to someone which is, you live in the same city together, rather to sell it to someone that you have a field together in the same area. Now, shachin v'talmud chacham, there's two people. One is a shachin, a neighbor, someone that you deal with, and the other one is a talmud chacham. So always talmud chacham kedem. He comes even before a shachin, which means a shachin ha'ir. We're talking about a shachin ha'ir before. So a shachin ha'ir is before a shachin asada. But a talmud chacham is before a shachin ha'ir, and certainly before shachin asada. Now, if there's a karev and a talmud chacham, there's a person, he's a relative, and the Talmud Chacham is again Talmud Chacham Kedem. Because since he's a Talmud Chacham, so a Talmud Chacham comes before a Karev, he comes before a Shachan Ha'ir, and certain before a Shachan Asada. Now, Shachan the Karev, if you have two people, one is a Shachan, one is a Karev. Shachan means someone you deal with a little bit. And a Karev, so the din is HaShachan Kedem. The Shachan is Kedem. Shekam Zeh Bechlal HaTeva Yosher. Just like we said before, that there's a Teva Yosher to sell it to the neighbor, because Lepel, he's going to be benefiting from it. So there's also a Tevi Yosher to sell it to the Shachan. Now, Kodim echad v'kana lepel, if one of them bought it, so lepel there's a din that the moicher should sell it. There's these two options. You should sell it. First thing should be sold to a Talmud Chacham, and then you should sell it to a shachan ear. And obviously, if they're neither not a shachan ear, not a shachan asada, so then there's a musig of a karev. A karev is also kedem. He's not kedem a shachan, but he's kedem of someone that's not a karev. However, kadem echad v'kana, lepel one of them went ahead and was kaina, is zacha ve'ein chaveri sheroi liktem leyachal asalke, hein ve'ein echad men balametzer. But again, balametzer. So the din is not only the din is you should go sell it to the balametzer, but the din is that if you sold it to someone else, the balametzer could go and be masaliket. Over here, there's no din that you could be masaliket. Over here, there's just a din. You, the moicher himself, should rather sell it to this person, to the Talmud Chacham, to the shachan. Masha'in came, if lepel he sold it to someone else, so that person doesn't have a right to be masalik the buyer. Sholitzivu chacham medavar zeh el derech sidus v'nefesh tei v'hisha yisekach. It's not a psa'ikra de dina. So again, it's not like a schus that he has a rights to this karka. It's just that it's a nefesh chsidus, derech chsidus, and nefesh teva. So this is what should be done. Masha'in, and if it wasn't done, so the other person doesn't have a right to be masalik the buyer. Slikalu hilcha Shcheinim.